Hello and welcome to When Grooms Get Engaged, the podcast about a guy's perspective to wedding planning from two guys that are currently trying to survive their own. I'm Steve, and this week we have another special interview episode. Anesti is a successfully engaged groom and threw a hell of a wedding, so we're going to ask him some questions and hopefully learn from his successes. But first, please like, subscribe, and share this podcast so we can reach other guys going through the wedding planning process. And with that, Anesti, how you doing? Thanks for joining us today.
Good, Steve. Good. Glad to be here. Really excited. Appreciate the opportunity to be on the podcast. I'm a listener, so it's nice to be on the other side.
Yeah, no. Thanks for being here. Every guy definitely has a different journey when it comes to their wedding, and I think as guys, these aren't things we talk about, right? But when you're in the middle of it, you're kind of going in blind. So, as many perspectives as we can hear, I think it's going to definitely help, a lot of people. So Anesti, I guess to get the ball rolling, like, when did you get married? When did you start this whole wedding planning process, and finally had the big day?
Yeah. So I got married. It's actually been 10 years now. I was 27 years old, and this was in May of 2014. And so, I'm going to maybe offer a little bit different perspective than some of the recent weddings, but I think there's quite a bit of overlap from the episodes that I've heard and some of the processes, the struggles, the enjoyable parts. There's a lot of consistency, but also some differences, including price, of course. Things have just gotten more expensive.
Man, it's crazy. I know I've told you this in private before, but my barometer for inflation is the price of a McChicken. And I was at McDonald's I don't know, last week or something, and a McChicken's almost $3 now. It's crazy. It's too much.
You got to get the app.
Even with the app, man, they take out a bunch of offers that they used to have. Anyway, This is not a McDonald's bashing podcast. So you got married about 10 years ago, which, man, congrats, 10 years. That's awesome. Double digits.
Thank you.
But when you guys started, what did you start with? What ideas were there in your head? Did you have a guest count you wanted to hit? Did you have a spot where you wanted to get married? Or were these kind of things that you figured out as you went through the process?
Yeah, we at that point when we got engaged, it was a complete surprise. We talked about, obviously we were together for several years, so we talked about getting married, and but Emily, when I proposed in San Francisco, Emily did not know it was coming then. And so we hadn't done a ton of pre-planning. And a lot of it started off, from the point of when we got engaged, which was just over a year, probably about 14 months before the actual wedding date. So we had a good stretch of time to start and to go through the planning process, but nothing prior to the engagement.
Gotcha. So as soon as you guys got engaged, that was essentially your start point.
Yeah, exactly. And it all really starts with, first and foremost, trying to get an idea of how many people will be invited, because that will inform the venues you're looking at, right? Capacity is a big element, especially for, we have big families. And we had 400 people at our wedding. And just off the bat, the number of people attending the wedding was, sort of a filter. There's only so many places that can hold over 400 people, and so for us, we were looking at both venues in the city. We lived in the Wrigleyville area at the time, but our families are both in the suburbs, so we also were looking at venues in the suburbs. And really, this capacity element was a big factor and determinant. We ended up choosing a hall in the suburbs, not too far from where Emily's family lives. And, the things that went into it, obviously, are not only capacity, but just when you have 400 people, they're driving, so the parking elements of it. We were younger. If I were getting married today, the budget would be a lot different. But obviously it was cheaper to have the wedding in the suburbs than it would have been to have in the city. So those were some of the factors that sort of went into the planning process.
Yeah. So guest count like the struggles with figuring that out never change. When you guys were figuring out the guest count, how much input did families have into it? You know, how many like blanket plus ones did you guys give? Was it child free or not child free? Like, were these things that you considered going in, or were these things that as you started putting people down, you were like, oh man, we got to figure out, do we give this person a plus one? Do we let this kid come? You know, like, how did that evolve?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think the child thing, we invited children for all the family members that were coming. The plus one, so if any friends or family members that were obviously if they had a significant other, of course there's a plus one. But even if we knew they were dating, we had met the person, we included them on the invite. Some of the friends that are or were single at the time, we just ended up inviting them like solo without the plus one. Others that we ended up inviting solo, but during the range of when we had like started to plan for this and sent out the save the dates and they started to see someone, we added it after the fact. But the way that we thought about it is anyone that's has a significant other or has been dating someone that we know about, like we included them, especially after we decided that we finalized the venue in the suburbs, and the capacity was, we had some bleed over, some ability to go over, and so that was a big factor too.
Yeah, and you said you had about 400 people, right? Do you remember about how many you actually invited? Like, what was your percent that came?
Yeah, good question. So we had invited, I want to say about 460, 450 to 460. And, it was under 500 for sure, but I think it was about 460 people. And, we were at that point amongst our friend group, so people our age, we were, I believe, the first to get married. And so it was sort of like a novelty, and pretty much everyone, everyone came, which was awesome. And we had a great time, huge party. Became like almost like a club by the end of the night. But
I remember. Yep.
yeah. So 88 to 90%, of the people we met.
That's really high. That's definitely an awesome number, right? Because like I've seen people, even like local weddings, be as low as like 65% maybe end up coming. So you guys were almost 90%. Like that's definitely awesome.
Totally. Like I said, maybe today may be different. Like after all those, when you consider that 100 of the guests, it was probably their first, wedding amongst like their friend group post college. By now, maybe they've been to like 100 weddings, and so their response rate may be a little bit different.
Yeah, that's true. But
they have kids, and babysitting is an element too that you consider.
Yeah, exactly. And I know when we were planning our wedding, like the whole thing with plus ones, I know at that age when you were getting married, like having a plus one is huge. Like you will find a date,
Yeah.
But like now at this age, like you're not just gonna find a random wedding date just to have a wedding date. You're usually coupled up, so like you have that pretty clearly.
Yes. And I must say, while we're on the topic of your wedding, is one of the most incredible weddings I've ever been to. So awesome job with the planning and everything, the execution.
Thank you. Like I can't stress this enough. A wedding planner, like, yeah, it's going to cost you money, but the amount of like things they do for you and just like stress they take off your shoulders is just like, you can't really put a price to it. This is like your big day. Just like not having stress about things actually happening is huge. But actually, while we're on the topic of a wedding planner, Anesti, did you guys have any kind of planner, or was this planned by yourselves?
Yeah, so we, again, if I were getting married today, I would definitely have a planner. Back then, having a planner wasn't as common. I mean, definitely a lot of people had them, but I think for us more so was like we were earlier in our careers, we were a little bit more budget conscious. And, when you look at like, okay, well, where do you want to save money? I think the wedding planning, we just stick it on our own. The wedding planner was probably like my mom and like Emily's sisters and family, and so they all helped chip in a little bit. Today, definitely would look at that differently, and just prioritizing my time, and also being a different part of my career with a bigger budget and a planner is one of the first things I would look at.
Yeah. So you guys Did Emily take a lot of that like wedding planning? Like how involved were you?
Yeah, she did awesome. I have to give her a ton of credit. I mean, she was on top of it, and she's very creative. So when it comes to, the flowers and decorations and the invites and the tables, like the table numbers and all that, I mean, she took a huge, huge lead in those planning efforts. So I have to give her sort of kudos for doing an awesome job on the planning side. And she likes this type of, creative outlet. I think she thrives in that type of environment. And so I'm just lucky to have had her to help with a lot of the planning process. So
I mean, yes, like she may like it, but I don't think we can discount like how much actual work it really is.
totally,
Even if you enjoy it, like just keeping on top of this stuff it's definitely commendable. It's definitely like it's a lot, right? Like it's not
totally.
easy, even if you like it.
Yeah, yeah. Some of the hardest things though, I don't know that a planner would necessarily, like, for example, one of the things that was challenging, especially when you have a large wedding, is like keeping track of the RSVPs, reaching out to people who haven't sent them by the deadline, and that type of thing. In most cases, like you're responsible for doing, and so that element still existed. What would you say, like when you look at your wedding with a wedding planner, the day of, I'm sure was probably like a huge benefit in terms of having the planners coordinate with all the vendors, but even I assume sourcing, right? Sourcing photographers and food caterers and so on.
Yeah, I think for weddings, I think a day of is mandatory, right?
Yeah,
You are in no position to be managing anything, right? Besides being in your own wedding. But
yeah,
leading up to the wedding, like sourcing stuff, like you mentioned, I mean, we're not in this field, right? If there's something we want to do, like I have no idea how to find random vendor that does this thing I saw on Instagram, and like
totally.
let's say you see something, you can be like, oh yeah, you can Google it, but like you don't know the verbiage that the industry uses, so you can actually get a proper hit, you know? Or
Absolutely.
if that vendor sees you reaching out, they're like, who the hell is this random person? Like, why would I even bother reaching out to them? Like, I don't know if they're worth my time. With the wedding planner, it bridges that gap. It tells you who to go to, and they have the expertise, but also the reputation that it's someone that the vendor's like, oh, hey, I worked with this person before, or they have clients in this industry. Like, it's someone legit. I can't waste my
Yeah,
time, and me take this call. Like, this is worth my time.
totally,
So,
totally.
like, yeah, I can't stress it. Like, our wedding, Anesti, like, without our planner, we would have no idea where to find any of these people. And, like, especially in Greece, because, like, on a Greek island specifically, nothing happens before Easter.
Yeah,
Like October till end of Easter, like the island's dead. No one's answering emails, no one's taking calls. And like I
yeah,
can't wait until June for a wedding in July to like reach someone. That doesn't make any sense.
totally. Oh, especially
Uh
if they're operating on Greek time, like you
yeah,
said.
exactly.
So
Greek time is real, ladies and gentlemen. It's definitely a time zone, that's for sure. Um,
yeah, one thing I will just say that because we chose like a banquet hall, um, we had like the hall itself, the main event planner at the banquet hall, Patricia. She's mother of one of Emily's like sister's friends. So we knew her. She really did an awesome job like helping with all the coordination. One of the benefits of doing that type of wedding where it's in a venue that also serves food, everything's sort of concentrated. Like they not only do they make it easy for you in terms of you have a set like venue you can choose from, and they take care of the chairs, they take care of the lighting, and they help the DJ when they come into where they can set up, and they're doing a lot of those coordination elements for you, and that's part of the reason we chose the hall as well, because we were looking at venues where there was just you rent the space and then you have to figure out all the
Everything
vendors
else.
on your
Yeah.
own, and it's a ton of work, especially if you're not using a wedding planner. And so that was another element, like for us, that played into the decision to actually book the hall itself, and consolidate a lot of those decisions.
Yeah. And this is something that I can't stress enough how easy some of these venues make it to throw something, right?
Yeah.
They're a well-oiled machine. If you do have to make decisions between vendors, sometimes maybe they'll give you their preferred vendors, and if they're on that list, they'll operate
Yep.
well. They have a relationship, right? There's no miscommunication. And on one hand, yes, you can go like in a banquet hall, we've been to those weddings before, right? On the other hand, it's gonna go well. You won't have, as many like issues of vendor miscommunication, which
Yeah.
just things going smoothly is worth so much, honestly,
Totally.
especially when you're
Totally.
getting married.
And day of, it was pretty seamless. I mean, like I
Yeah.
don't recall really making a ton of like decisions, if any, on that day. So they were great. I don't even know if the big hall's still around. It's called Giorgio's, but shout out
Mhm.
to George's if they're still around.
Hopefully, we'll have to look it up. But there is something that has changed a little bit from when you were planning a wedding versus now. How prevalent were like the Knot, Zola, all these like all-in-one wedding websites?
Not prevalent. Obviously now it's table stakes, and you can use those sites not only to help with planning, but to help with communication, to have a source of like information for all your guests. And we didn't have that. Really, like the only thing that we had was whatever like that can be on or the other registry places offer, like we had registries with
Yeah.
some of those stores. They're not, and the other websites, like they weren't really around. I think they became really popular in the years after our wedding.
Man, and Anesti, like, because you were talking about chasing RSVPs, like something like the Knot or Zola make that easier because people
Totally,
don't have to like mail you back an RSVP. They just go online, say
100%.
yes or no. Or like I know during your wedding, I'm assuming the biggest way to disseminate information is to like go to your mom, be like, "Hey, mom, tell our family that X, Y, and Z. Maybe the church is starting half an hour later, or this
Exactly.
is changing here. And you have to like kind of hope that she remembers everyone, all 400 people. But now you can kind of like go on there, make a change, and then like a mass email distribution to all your guests. If you have their emails, it just makes that stuff so much easier.
100%. I mean, it would be nice. I think that would have been one additional stressor, off our shoulders, having that type of technology available. Probably would still be going to my mom for certain things to
Yeah, of
follow up with
course.
certain people, but it would definitely minimize that burden.
Yeah. Speaking of your mom and family in general, how much family pressure did you have, especially when it comes to the guests?
Yeah, I think, there's a lot of input for sure
A
that the family had.
lot of
And
opinions.
a lot of opinions on, we basically just, invited everyone that we wanted to, that the family wanted to invite. And we're like, I don't know if I can swear on this podcast, but we were like, I said,
F it. Yeah.
we're just going to have a huge party, invite everyone. I would say though that like, again, different person, 10 years older, been to 20 weddings. My perspective on things is different. Like today, one of the things I would probably do differently is just focus more on what makes us happy, like
Hmm.
my wife and I, and less inputs externally, or trying to make everyone else happy. But that said, like, listen, like at the end of the day, it was an awesome wedding. It was great to have everyone there. Great party, good time, and so no regrets or anything like that.
Yeah, for sure. No, I remember at the end of your guys' wedding, it literally became a club. And I'm trying to remember, I think there was like a bar next door or something, or like
Yes.
close. Because I remember I lost my suit jacket at some point.
Yeah.
In that place,
Yeah.
and I had to go back the next day, and I'm like, and find it, and like they gave me the wrong size, so I had to go back again. Like it was a
That's
night. It was fun.
hilarious.
It was definitely a good time.
Well, it's an indicator of it being a good time if you lost your
If you
jacket.
lost something, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a club right next door to the hall, and the hardcore partiers, including both of us, and we were there obviously. So it didn't shut down until 2 in the morning or 3 in the morning. I can't remember what time. Definitely the party kept going after the formal wedding that he closed down.
Yeah, so it's still practically a Grease wedding,
Yeah,
Just,
exactly.
just keep it going.
Exactly.
um, is there something that you didn't put much thought into, like during the planning, but like you kind of wish you did on the wedding day?
Yeah, I think, you know, there weren't many, there wasn't much of that. I'd say, like, I'm pretty type A, and Emily's a pretty awesome planner. So, like, we had really been thoughtful about all the different elements that went into the process. I think maybe one of the things that you could never fully anticipate is the weather.
Mm-hmm.
And so we had, plans. We got ready in the city. I lived in the city at the time, and just the our plan for where we take pictures and things like that. It snowed, I think maybe the day before, right? And so we were thinking like, oh man, this may not work out outside, like where we're going for pictures and a lot of the pre-wedding planning, and even like with the wedding party after the wedding, we went to the park and reserved nearby, and we were thinking if it snows, this is really gonna change things quite a bit. And so maybe I would sort of have a plan B, because
Mm-hmm.
we cut it pretty close, um, weather-wise, but it ended up working out. But yeah, if I'm planning today, I would probably have a plan B for a lot of the outdoor elements, considering you can't really predict the weather.
Yeah, yeah, especially in Chicago. Like
Exactly.
who knows what's gonna happen.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, it was May. Like I said, it was snowing
yeah.
in May.
So it's like okay, and then May. Was that year? Did you decide that be after Easter, right? Because the church won't have any weddings until after Easter. So did
Yeah.
that kind of like
Yeah.
factor into the timing at all?
That definitely played into it, when the church can do the weddings. And we also picked a church. Obviously, we got married in the Greek Orthodox Church. Emily's Catholic. And one of the things we decided to do, just considering we're getting married in a Greek Orthodox Church, is pick one that's sort of closer to her family as well. And St. Spiridon in the south suburbs here of Chicago is where we got married. And the service itself was beautiful. Like the priest explained everything because he knew that there was a lot of people that are not Greek Orthodox who were there. It was a full church, and so he did an awesome job speaking through the various elements, of the ceremony and the meaning of them. And a lot of people came up to us afterwards and said that was really cool.
Hmm.
Never been to a Greek wedding, and it was cool to be part of that tradition.
Yeah, if you've never been to a Greek wedding before, a lot of people are confused that the bride and groom never look at each other. They're just always looking straight,
Yeah,
or like the awkward way they hold hands. It's got to be a right hand on right hand. And everything is three times. Whatever you do, you got to do it three times. So you're there for a
yeah,
bit.
you're there for a
But
bit.
yeah, you're there for a bit. But it's good that the priest kind of like walks you through because it is a beautiful ceremony, right? The symbolism in it
Absolutely.
is really nice. It's really nice.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
like, how hard was it to coordinate the church with your venue? Like, did you have a lot
Uh,
like prep to do? I know you have to do like pre-can on that stuff, but like availability of the church, like, was that easy? Was that hard?
no, it wasn't too. I mean, it wasn't too hard because we it was a year, over a year, like 14 months when we got engaged, and right after we got engaged, we started planning.
Hmm.
There were definitely several venues that were crossed off the list right away because of the lack of availability. You know, in the spring when we wanted to get married, or maybe like the church was available but not the venue, or vice versa. But it wasn't a huge. I'd say if we had waited longer, right? If you're planning a wedding 6 months after you get engaged, and then your lead time is 6 months or less, like that becomes much more difficult. But I think so we had that longer lead time. It was a little bit easier to coordinate.
Hmm. And you feel like 12 months, 12, I think you said 14 is a good cushion to kind of make sure you have everything planned so you're not rushing.
But
Um,
yeah, and the first two things are, if you get married, if you're planning to get married in a church, obviously coordinating the date with the church and the venue. I mean, those are the one and two, right? Once
mhm.
you book the venue and the church, and then you have some breathing room to do a lot of the rest of the planning. But of course, none of it can happen until you want to book the date with the venue and the church as well.
Yeah, yeah, those are. I know what we say, what Chris and I say is as soon as you kind of have an idea of a rough guest count, book a venue. Like
Totally.
get that locked in. That's going to be your biggest stressor. And then on the church side, like you mentioned that your venue was reasonably close to the church. Like, don't book a church and venue halfway across town from each other,
Yeah.
because if people have to drive like an hour and a half to get from one to the other, like that's going to put a damper on the party. It's going to take time from how long people
Exactly.
can like enjoy the night. I'm
Exactly.
trying to remember, how far was your venue from the church?
It was like 20 minutes, I want to say.
Okay,
So
that's
pretty
perfect.
close. Yeah, pretty close. People had, I think we had maybe an hour, maybe an hour, hour and a half or so in between, because we took some pictures with the wedding party
Yep.
immediately after the wedding, and so we got there during like cocktail hour, but it worked out perfectly.
Nice. Yeah, no, that's exactly 20 minutes. Like that's great for your guests, so they're not putting around. I'm sure they had like appetizers or like drinks, something to keep them busy.
Exactly.
Conversation. Yep. Yeah, which is good. Now, honestly, I know as guys, one of the things that we love numbers. And like one of the most stressful things is like figuring out a budget for your wedding. Like, how close were you guys to actually hitting your budget when all was said and done?
Yeah, we were, I want to say, like within 5% of our budget, and so that ended up working out perfectly. And so I think a big part of that is the consolidation that we were able to take advantage of in the banquet hall, and things add up quickly. Like for 400 people, when
So
you're
quickly.
thinking, okay, you want to get Shivari chairs, and like I can't remember what it is, $2 or $3 to rent per chair, and so you multiply that by 400. I mean, these little things, but they do add up fairly quickly when you have a group that size. And I would say probably the same wedding we had then, though, was maybe would cost twice as much, if I had to guess, today, just given the increases in prices.
Yeah.
We're seeing. So,
dude, the prices right now, the way they're increasing, and it's not just like the price that you see, it's also like the miscellaneous fees. Like, what were the fee structures back then? Because right now, getting married in the city, having an event in the city, right? Not just getting married, but an event. You have your sales tax, obviously. You have your like credit card processing fees, which they add you that now, like 3-4%. Some places will still charge you like a COVID fee, even though we're 2 years removed from that now, which is another like 3%.
Yeah, it's crazy.
They give you like a service fee, which sometimes may or may not be like a gratuity, so you might have to hit that as well. Like before you know it, you're at 50% extra on just like fees and miscellaneous costs on top of whatever the per plate cost is. Like, was that the same back then too?
Of course, you had your gratuity and you had your taxes. The taxes, another benefit of the suburbs was we didn't have to pay the city of Chicago taxes, which are obviously much higher. But we had, the way it was set up at the hall was package deals. So you pick, depending on like your entree, your appetizers, how long do you want an open bar for? I think you pick whatever the maximum open action was. Keep the alcohol flowing. And so all those things were sort of priced in to the contract that we had with the hall. The only things that were sort of outside of that, included, of course, you've got your music, entertainment elements, and we had some late night party favors, late night food, maybe like glow sticks, and if you're going to have snacks, things like that were sort of outside of the norm that we brought on our own. But it was all packaged together, and I think, I can't remember, it came out to like maybe $120 per head per person or something like that, all in. I think maybe our budget was like 100 to 125, something in that range.
Okay, yeah, that's not bad.
Yeah, so we were right in all that.
Yeah, no, that's awesome, because like a lot of people will start this in the beginning and then like start upgrading little things, and it'll be like, oh, this is $2, but it's $2 times 100 people in our case, 400 people in your case. All of a
Totally.
sudden, it's not $2; it's $1,000. Like with wedding planning, anything you change, nothing is under 1,000. I feel like it's.
I mean, even like I remember we added one of the changes we made later on was we swapped out like I forgot what it was, potato for asparagus, and like the asparagus option was like $4 a person, or and so
$4 a
four
person for
dollars
asparagus?
something like that times
That's
400.
insane.
So like the asparagus costs $1,600. These are the little things that sort of add up once you multiply them out. But yeah, how was the fees in Greece? I know Greece used to be like a tax-free, fee-free zone a long time ago, and obviously things have changed quite a bit.
They haven't changed that much.
Oh, that's good.
It's essentially you have to pay VAT on like wires, credit card transactions, and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But then you get certain discounts if you pay with cash. So
Yeah,
they
that makes sense.
incentivize you to pay cash. But where the big difference is in Greece, in Europe, anywhere really, versus America, is that service fee, that gratuity expectation, right? Because
Yeah, that's
Anesti
true.
10 years ago was what? How much was it? Was it still 20% 10 years ago? 15%, something like that?
Yeah, it was. I think the automatic amount was 18%, and then we gave them
Hmm.
extra, like the 20% essentially.
Yeah. Now, like the automatic amount is like, I'm seeing 25 in some places. Like
Yeah, I've seen that before too.
it just keeps going up, and when you're eating by yourself, like let's say $100 meal for like you and your wife, 30, 25%, whatever, $25. But when you're talking, some of these weddings, 50, 60, 70K, you're adding 25% of that. That's an insane amount of money. That's like where they really get you. Um,
Yeah, I think there's even a term for it now. I think they call it like tipping fatigue.
it's
Right.
true. Like if I'm going to
Yeah.
Starbucks and you're asking me to tip, I'm like, why? My coffee is $7. Like
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
enough.
I tip my Starbucks people. We see them way too frequently to not tip.
Do you?
Yeah. Yeah. But I think about it every time. I'm going to add $1 to the $7 coffee.
That's so
Yeah.
honestly,
It adds up.
I'm just gonna buy you like an espresso machine, make your own Starbucks, save some money.
I'm going to hold you to that.
Honestly, I from our registry, Crate and Barrel, they just gave us like a 30% off coupon for like an espresso. I'm like, okay, cool, I can use this somewhere.
Amazing.
So
I'll come
maybe.
over to your house. You make them, and instead of going to Starbucks, I'll just make a daily trip to your place.
Hey, that's fine. Just give me like a 10-minute heads up.
Done.
But yeah, going back to the wedding, like it sounds like you had a pretty good planning experience. In general, it sounds like Emily did a lot of great work, right?
Yeah,
Was
absolutely.
there anything you guys like, didn't like butt heads on a little bit? Was there like maybe you wanted steak and she was like, no, I want salmon? Was there something that you guys didn't quite agree on? And how did you solve that conflict?
Well, we solved conflict by going with whatever Emily uh, suggested or wanted. No, but like maybe some little things. For example, I think we got more photographers. I said, maybe one or two photographers is fine. But, Emily's thought was, well, we're going to have photographers at her house where she's getting ready with her family.
Hmm.
We're going to have photographers at my place and I'm getting ready, and there's going to be photographers at the church and then also afterwards. And there's we had a team of multiple photographers. It was great. It ended up working out perfectly. But I think that's one of the things, when I'm looking at, hey, like where can we keep costs
Same,
low?
yeah.
I think we were maybe contemplating a videographer at first, and then we both agreed like maybe we don't need that element of it. And now they're much more
Hmm.
popular again. But I think photography was one of them. Even a little bit on the guest list, like 80% or more of the guest list was, on my side.
Yeah, I know. I know how
Yeah,
that
yeah,
works.
yeah, exactly. So, but she knew that also going in. I mean, it wasn't like a
Hmm.
surprise or anything like that.
Yeah, yeah. And I know like one of the things in this is like you will bump heads. You're gonna not agree on like everything, right? It's just important not to like take it out on each other. because at the end of the day, like
Yeah,
it is a team effort, you know. And like I will
totally.
say, like in terms of your example with the photographers, like Emily's right, you know, having more than two like made sense. You guys had a huge party,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
I'm assuming it's something that
exactly.
you definitely like appreciate now.
Absolutely. No, it was perfect. It ended up being exactly what we needed. She was right as usual, and the only the funny thing, here's one I just thought of. We, my perspective was, hey, we should split the thank yous 50-50. Um, but Emily, it's like, hey, you should write the thank yous for your family, and I'll do it for mine. And obviously, that was a little bit lopsided because I had a lot more guests. But it was the least I could do. She ended up still helping me with mine as well. So
Yeah. I know Gina and I mentioned the same thing. She's like, yeah, you write the things for your people. I write it for my people. I'm like, that's fair considering exactly 80% were my
yeah,
family.
yeah, exactly.
But yeah, like it can't be stressed. It can't be like mentioned enough, like how much help, our significant others were in this, like a lot of kudos. This thing is not easy. Like you and Emily, no planner, like she definitely did a lot of work on it. And in our case, even with a planner, like Gina was still up, reviewing. Like she's the one who had the vision. The planner just kind of executed on it. So like that's
Yeah,
still a lot of work, still a lot of kudos. Absolutely.
totally, totally. And one thing I forgot to mention, and I think like this was Emily's idea too, because we had kids at the wedding. We invited obviously kids, families that had kids that could bring their kids. Um, we had hired like a person to do balloons and just some
Mm.
activities and things that the kids could do at the venue itself, which was great. Like they were occupied, they were having a great time as well. So
This is actually a good point to stress. If you're bringing kids, especially if they're young kids, they have a lot of energy. Give them something to do. If you don't, we've all seen the stereotype of the crazy crying baby just running around because they're bored out of their minds, bugging everyone. So, like,
yeah,
yeah, if you're going to have, 20, 30 kids there, like, if you have a way of getting some kind of entertainment for them, it'll make the wedding just like that much smoother and calmer for the adults.
absolutely. And you did a great job. I think that your wedding, you guys had you and Gina had babysitters that came and played games with the kids, and I mean that was like such a uh, awesome idea, and it gave us time. Not only did it make the actual dinner and dance floor a little bit more peaceful, but it gave the parents some time and ability to enjoy it as well without the kids jumping on their backs.
And that was all Gina. Like she's like, "Do we need a babysitter?" And like in my mind, I'm like, "Why? Why do we
It
need a
was that was
babysitter?"
that was amazing. Good job, Gina.
But it's actually funny, yeah, because people loved it, and that company that we hired, I know you reached out to them after the fact.
Yeah,
Um, Dina also reached out to them after the fact, and
they
I
were great.
think there might have been one more. So they made some money.
Yeah,
They
absolutely.
got some business, so they had a great time. But people loved them, right? They were so attentive. People loved like what they were doing with their kids. Like they felt very safe, and like that's huge. Because like you said, then all of a sudden you could party. Like your kid is
Absolutely.
safe. You don't have to like have your a left eye always looking in that direction.
100%. And the
Which
kids
is
loved it too. So
exactly, yep, which is great. Um, Honestly, one thing we didn't touch on, and I know this was a big thing for me, I kept going down Reddit rabbit holes, is what did you wear? How did you decide what you were going to wear? Did you put a lot of thought into it, or was it just kind of, an
yeah,
afterthought? Like where were you on that?
yeah, it's a good question. Essentially, we had a spring wedding, and so the color theme of a lot of the like decorations and um, even like the bridesmaids' dresses, things like that. They were very like string color themed, and so when I went to look at tuxes, I ended up getting, it was like a lighter, not traditional black and white, but it was like a lighter gray uh, tux, and I had a like pinkish, I would say, like bow tie, but the color scheme sort of was determined by a lot of the other like decorative elements, of the wedding itself. I think I would have probably picked that like a combination looked great. I was happy with the way
Mhm.
it turned out. The people at the tuxedo store, I think formerly Modern is the one I use in Chicago. They helped quite a bit, with picking out the various elements. So, um, it worked out pretty well.
Nice. And was because you mentioned a wedding party. I know we didn't do one, but you did. How many people did you guys have at your wedding party?
Ooh, there
So I
was
remember
quite
it
a
being
few
sizable.
people.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to say it was probably like 14, maybe 16. Um, like seven or eight and eight. Emily
Hmm.
has two sisters. Of course, you were my Kumbara, Arthur, uh, best man. But then we also had family flying in
Hmm.
from out of the country, my cousins, so they were included. Both of Emily's sisters, were married, so their husbands, or I'm actually good friends with anyway, were part of the groomsmen group. So we had a pretty large wedding party, proportional to the size of the overall
Of the wedding.
guest list, I
Yeah.
would say. But yeah,
No, yeah, for sure. Like, still, it was a great group. It was definitely a great group.
absolutely,
Um,
yeah.
so like, but yeah, just
And
like
we had
from
a
your
trolley
wedding,
to haul everyone around for pictures and everything afterwards.
that's
But it was great.
which is I feel like is a must. That many people to get into like pictures there and back, like you have to have them all in one spot.
Exactly.
You can't expect people to like find their own way and still meet a deadline.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, no, your wedding was amazing, right? Like I had a blast. I know everyone else had a blast, especially when it became literally a club, around like 11 p.m. or whatever it turned, I'm sure some of the older folks wanted some more, Greek music or Albanian music to dance to, but at the end of the day, the glow sticks won out that fight.
We got those jams, for the rest of the crowd early on. I mean, and a lot of time, they're going home, they're dipping out around
Yeah.
10:30, anyway, and so the timing of it all was perfect. And the weddings in the U.S. don't go as late. I mean, usually it's your friends who are sticking
Hmm.
through the end of it, like to shut the place down, and that's when we sort of turned it into a club. So yeah, it was natural progression of things.
Yeah, it all made sense. It all made sense. But Anesti, before I let you go, is there one piece of advice that you want to give to guys that are just engaged, just started planning their wedding, like something that they definitely for sure do, don't forget, don't skip out on.
Yeah, well, I would maybe give almost the opposite advice, which is like, don't stress out too much. Do what makes you happy. What makes you and your spouse happy. There's going to be a lot of input from many people coming in, and at the end of the day, like, it's your wedding, right? Focus on yourself and what you want to be part of that day. And the other piece of advice, which I would give to you too, Steve, and apply to my wedding, which is, if you're going to have a bow tie, learn how to tie a bow tie prior to the wedding. Yeah, I
Oh,
had a snafu too, where I had the trolley on the day of the wedding drive to the place where I bought the bow tie and my tuxedo, and I had the guy there tie the bow tie for me. So it was a funny story, looking back on it. But in the moment, I was like sweating bullets, super stressful.
yeah. Anesti, you were sweating bullets in Greece too, trying to tie a bow
That's
tie again.
deja vu. It was
It
deja
was,
vu.
it was practically surgery.
We got it though.
We Man, I haven't gotten the full album of the pictures or the video yet. That's what I'm looking forward to the most.
I'm
That
excited.
and our first dance. Like I want to see the first dance, and I want to see there's five guys in one YouTube video all huddled together trying to tie a bow tie.
It was a true team effort.
Honestly,
That's for sure.
I could not have gotten married without you guys. Like
Well, it's fun to have some of those like snafus, right? Because like those are some of the things you remember and stories to tell after the
oh,
fact for years to come.
100%. That I will remember. I'm gonna keep talking about it until I'm old and senile. Probably I'll still remember that. Just because it's
Yeah,
like, who spends 12 months planning their wedding and then they get sidetracked for 40 minutes trying to tie a freaking bow tie.
That's hilarious.
It's just a disaster. But yeah, with that, Anesti, thanks for hanging out. Hopefully, some guys can learn some valuable things from this. Like I said, you had a great wedding. Everyone had a blast, right? You survived the wedding planning process, and that's all you could ask for.
Absolutely.
So yeah,
Absolutely.
yep.
And thank you for having me on the podcast. It's been awesome to have a conversation with you. Also, congrats. Awesome job on your own wedding.
Thank you.
You executed it flawlessly. And for anyone listening, there's a lot to learn from a pro like yourself. So keep it up.
Man, a pro. I don't know if I go that far, but I'm glad
Give
to hear
yourself some
that you
credit.
guys. Well, I'm gonna give Gina some credit.
That's true.
You
are a pro. See, that's the right answer.
I helped her, look over some of those emails she was sending. Did a great job. But yeah, Anesti, thanks a lot for hanging out. Actually, is there anywhere that people can find you if they're interested in other thoughts of yours?
Okay. You can follow me on Twitter at Anesti Dhima or on Instagram if you like landscape photography. I'm a big photo buff, Anesti.Dhima. And if you have any questions, feel free to DM me on either.
So Anesti got some sick photos in Corfu this last month. Really sick photos. You were practically our third photographer unofficially.
Well, it was a blast, and I enjoy it. It's fun. You have multiple friends and family members there that enjoy photography, and I'm sure they all contributed to it. And it's definitely a fun outlet. And I also love drones. And so if I wasn't the Kumar wedding, I probably would have brought my drone and been on drone duty as well. But you already had that covered, so.
Yeah, no. It's definitely check out Anesti stuff, especially if you want to see pictures of the Chicago skyline as well. Lately,
Yes.
we've been having some ridiculously red skies, and you do a good job capturing that, which is beautiful. It's so fascinating to see that sky look like that.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
But yeah, Anesti, thanks for hanging out. Everyone, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week. Chris will be back to talk about another thing that you definitely should not forget during your wedding planning process. All right, later.
Thank you. See ya.